Have you ever woken up in the morning, looked in the mirror and asked yourself, who have I become? You've done everything right. A stable career, a family, a life that many would admire. But deep inside, there's an emptiness, a lingering question you can't silence. Turning 40 isn't the end, it's the moment of truth. For years, you believed that success would bring happiness, that if you made enough money, you'd feel secure, that if you built the right life, everything would fall into place. But now you realize that none of these things truly define you. You haven't failed, you're simply at a crossroads, and this crossroads isn't a place to turn back. It's a chance to step forward toward the life you were meant to live. This is not a speech to inspire you, this is a wake-up call. You can't keep postponing your life. You can't keep living a version of yourself that doesn't feel real. It's time to face the dreams you abandoned, the fears you've buried, and the questions you've been too afraid to ask. Richard, my uncle, once stood where you are now. He had built a life that looked perfect on the outside, but inside he was lost, trapped in a crisis he never saw coming. But instead of ignoring it, he made a choice. He chose to change, to redefine what his life truly meant, and so can you. Now I want to hear your story. If you've ever felt lost, share it, because somewhere out there, someone is waiting for the words that only you can say. 140 is not the end. You've spent over 20 years working, climbing, pushing, achieving. You've built a life that looks successful, a career, a family, a reputation. You've done everything right. Then one night, your 16-year-old son looks at you and says, "Dad, you don't really know me." And suddenly something inside you cracks. For years, you convinced yourself that you were doing all of this for them, for your family, for your future. But in that moment, you realize you've been so busy building a life that you forgot to live it. I remember the day my Uncle Richard turned 40. He sat alone on his porch, an unopened beer in his hand, staring into the distance. When I asked him what was wrong, he sighed and said, 40 isn't just a number, kid. It's a mirror. A mirror that forces you to see everything you've done with your life. And that's the thing about reaching 40. You can't lie to yourself anymore. No more one day when I have time. No more someday I'll get to it. You are living in the future you once thought about. And if you don't like what you see, that's not the world's fault. That's on you. But here's the truth that no one tells you. This isn't the end. It's a beginning. A brutal, honest, unavoidable moment of truth. You spent your entire life following the rules. You built stability. You did what was expected of you. You told yourself, if I keep pushing, I'll finally get there. But where is there? You got the promotion, the house, the nice car, and yet something feels hollow. Because deep down, you know you've been running from yourself, from the questions you don't want to answer, from the truth you don't want to face. Seneca once said, life is long if you know how to use it, but most men don't. Most men live like a soldier stuck in battle, always fighting, always pushing forward, never stopping to ask, why am I fighting in the first place? And then one day they wake up, look in the mirror, and don't recognize the man staring back at them. That's where you are now, standing at the crossroads. And you have two choices. You can ignore it. Keep going. Keep telling yourself that this is just how life is. Maybe you work even harder. Maybe you drown out the emptiness with distractions, scrolling endlessly, drinking more than you should, and staying at the office later and later. You convince yourself that one day it will all make sense, that one day you'll feel at peace, but one day never comes. You already know this because you've been running in this cycle for years. The pain doesn't go away, it only grows louder, until one day it becomes impossible to ignore. Or you face it, you confront the truth you've been avoiding, that the life you've built isn't enough, not because it's bad, but because it's incomplete, that you don't need more success. You need more clarity. You don't need another goal, another achievement, another distraction. You need to stop and ask yourself the question you've been avoiding. What do I actually want? Not what your parents wanted for you. Not what society told you success looks like. Not what your 20-year-old self thought life should be, but what you, right now, truly need to feel fulfilled. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire, wrote daily about the battle within himself. He questioned his motives, his distractions, and his fears. Because even the most powerful men in history knew, if you don't master your own mind, you will be ruled by the world around you. And right now, you are not in control, but you can be. It starts here, with a decision to stop running, to stop numbing yourself with work, distractions, and empty pursuits, to finally sit in discomfort and ask, where have I been lying to myself? What have I sacrificed that actually mattered? Who have I neglected while chasing things that never filled me? Because here's the truth. This is your life, right now, not someday, not when you retire, not when you have more time, right now. The Stoics knew that the greatest tragedy of life is not death, it's never truly living. And if you don't act now, you'll wake up one day realizing you let your life pass by while you were waiting for something to change. Enough waiting, enough distractions. This is the wake-up call you've been avoiding. Write down 3 things you know need to change in your life. Not things you wish would change. Not things you'll try to fix. Things you must change before it's too late. Commit to one real action this week. A conversation you've been avoiding. A boundary you need to set. A habit you need to break. Remind yourself daily, you're not running out of time, you're running out of excuses. Most men will ignore this moment. They'll keep running, keep distracting themselves, keep pushing their truth deeper and deeper down until it's too late. But you don't have to be like most men. You don't have to reach 60, looking back with regret, wondering where all the years went. You can change, right now. The choice is yours. What will you do? 2. You're not running out of time. You're running out of illusions. There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes the ladder he's been climbing is leaning against the wrong wall. That moment usually doesn't come with fireworks or dramatic music. It comes in silence, in the stillness of an empty house, in the quiet sigh before unlocking the front door, in the voice of someone you love saying words you never expected to hear. For my Uncle Richard, that moment came at 45. He had spent his life doing what he thought was right. A respectable job, a family, a beautiful home, a life that looked perfect from the outside. But one day, he came home, and the house, once filled with laughter, with warmth, was empty. His wife had left, his kids were grown enough to have their own lives, and all that was left was silence. I remember sitting with him on his back porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. He stared at his hands, calloused from years of work, and finally said, I spent my whole life thinking that if I had a perfect family, a steady job, a house in a good neighborhood, I'd be happy. But now I see, I never stopped to ask if that was what I truly wanted. He had been chasing a dream that was never his. And that's the trap, the illusion, the one you don't even realize you're in until it's too late. For years you believed that once you had enough money, you'd feel secure. That once you built the right life, everything would fall into place. But what happens when you have those things, and the emptiness is still there? What happens when you wake up one day and realize you weren't chasing happiness? You were running from yourself. Money isn't the answer. It never was. It's a tool, a means to an end. But if you never define what the end looks like, you'll keep running in circles, thinking the next paycheck, the next car, the next promotion will finally give you peace. But peace doesn't come from the outside. It comes from knowing why you do what you do. Success doesn't betray you. Your definition of success does. You spent 40 years chasing what the world told you was important. A title, a stable paycheck, a reputation. You did everything right, and now at 40, you realize none of it was ever yours. Seneca wrote, if a man does not know to which port he is sailing, no wind is favorable. That's where most men get stuck. They think the problem is that they haven't worked hard enough. That if they just push a little more, everything will click into place. But the real problem isn't effort. It's direction. If you've spent your entire life climbing a ladder, only to realize it's leading somewhere you don't even want to go, what do? Do you keep climbing just because you're already halfway there? Do you tell yourself that starting over is impossible? Do you convince yourself that this is just life, that you should accept it and be grateful? Or do you have the courage to stop, to reassess, to admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been chasing the wrong thing? The hardest thing a man can do is question his own path. It's easier to stay busy, to drown out the quiet voice inside that says, is this really what I want? Because if you ask that question, you might not like the answer. Richard didn't. He had spent decades running on autopilot, thinking that checking the right boxes would bring fulfillment. But when he finally had everything he thought he wanted, he felt more lost than ever. That's when he made a decision. He stopped living for what looked good and started living for what felt right. He walked away from the career that had drained him for years. He simplified his life, got rid of things that no longer mattered. He started teaching kids in the neighborhood how to fix cars, not for money, not for recognition, but because it gave him something he hadn't felt in a long time, meaning. And for the first time in years, he felt alive. The moment you realize you've been chasing the wrong things is terrifying, but it's also your greatest opportunity. Because now, for the first time, you can choose differently. You can stop living by default. You can stop running on autopilot. You can stop trying to meet expectations that were never yours to begin with. But that takes courage. Most men won't do it. They'll keep grinding, keep distracting themselves, keep hoping that one day it will all make sense. But one day never comes. The truth is, you're not running out of time. You're running out of illusions. The illusion that happiness is something you can buy. The illusion that success is measured in job titles and bank accounts. The illusion is that if you just keep going, everything will eventually fall into place. It won't. Not unless you make it. So ask yourself, right now in this moment, what have I been chasing that isn't truly mine? What would I do if I wasn't afraid of letting go of the life I built? What kind of man do I want to be? Not for the world, not for my boss, not for my family, but for myself? Richard learned the hard way that success without meaning is just a cage. He spent years building walls around himself, thinking they would keep him safe, only to realize he had locked himself in. When he finally broke free, he didn't just rebuild his life, he redefined it. And so can you. You don't have to wait until everything falls apart. You don't have to hit rock bottom before you wake up. You can decide, right now, to stop running, to stop chasing what was never yours, to redefine what success actually means to you. Write down 3 things you thought would make you happy, but didn't. Cross them out. Then write down 3 things that actually bring you peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from money or status, but from knowing you're exactly where you need to be. This is your moment. The moment when you stop running from your truth and start running toward it. The moment when you finally take control. Most men will ignore it. Most men will choose comfort over clarity. But you're not most men. So what are you going to do? 3. The shadow you ignore will rule you. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. You always thought you were in control. You made the safe choices. You built a stable life. You did what was expected. But then, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel restless when you see someone living the life you once dreamed of? Why does something deep inside you whisper, is this really it? You told yourself you didn't want to start your own business because security was more important. You convinced yourself that your emotions don't matter, that anger, sadness, and frustration are things a strong man buries. You swallowed them, ignored them, pretended they weren't there, but they never left. They showed up in other ways. Tightness in your chest, stress that doesn't go away, that creeping resentment toward others who took the risks you never did. And for some men, it's worse. They explode, not at the world, but at their families, their friends, themselves. They lash out, drink too much, start fights, lose themselves in distractions. And then one day, they wake up and wonder, how did I get here? The truth? You were never in control. The things you ignored, the parts of yourself you buried, they controlled you. I called it the shadow, the hidden part of yourself, the side you pretend doesn't exist. But ignoring your shadow doesn't make it disappear. It only makes it stronger. I once knew a man who learned this too late. He was the definition of discipline, never let emotions get the best of him, never raised his voice, always the responsible one. But something changed when he turned 45. It started with small things, snapping at his wife over nothing, drinking a little more than usual. Then one night, I saw it firsthand. He grabbed me by the collar, eyes bloodshot, voice shaking. You know what's worse than failing? He said, his breath reeking of whiskey. It's realizing you spent your whole damn life living the wrong way. That was the night his shadow took over. And if you don't confront yours, it will take over too. You are not just the man you show the world. You are also the things you suppress, the regrets you don't talk about, the dreams you abandoned, the anger you pretend isn't there. And the more you refuse to face them, the more power they have over you. Have you ever noticed how the things that irritate you the most in others are often the things you refuse to acknowledge in yourself? The man who annoys you because he's too confident. Maybe you resent him because deep down you wish you had his courage. The friend who quit his job to pursue his passion. You mock him for being reckless, but is that really the truth? Or are you just afraid to admit that you wish you had his freedom? I believe that the parts of ourselves we reject don't disappear. They come back as fate, as regrets, as unexplained bitterness. This is why so many men feel lost in their 40s. They aren't just facing the reality of aging, they are facing the weight of who they could have been. You spent years trying to be the right kind of man, the kind who fits in, the kind who provides, the kind who keeps his emotions in check. And you convinced yourself that this version of you was the only one that existed. But deep down, you know that's not true. So what do? You face the shadow. You drag it out of the dark. Stop filtering your thoughts just to be acceptable. Pay attention to what triggers you in others, because those are often reflections of the parts of yourself you've buried. Stop pretending you don't have emotions. You do, and ignoring them doesn't make you stronger. It makes you a ticking time bomb. Stop assuming that because you didn't take risks before, it's too late now. You are still here. You still have time. Because the moment you stop fighting yourself, you realize something. You were never broken, you were simply unfinished. And now finally, you have the chance to become whole. The only question is, will you take it? For memento mori, your time is limited, so live today. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the right moment to finally take action? Waiting until you feel ready to start that project you've always dreamed of? Waiting for retirement to finally enjoy life? You tell yourself there's time, that next year, next month, next week, you'll finally do it. But how many next weeks have already passed? Have you ever noticed how quickly time moves now? How did the years blur together? How did last summer feel like yesterday? That should terrify you, because time isn't speeding up. You're just not paying attention. Richard once had a best friend, a man he had known since childhood. They grew up together, shared dreams, and talked about all the things they'd do one day. His friend used to say, "When I retire, I'm going to travel the world." That day never came. One morning, he had a stroke. Just like that, everything changed. No more travel plans. No more one day. Just a hospital bed, tubes running through his body, and eyes filled with regret. Richard stood by his bedside, gripping his friend's hand, watching tears roll down his face. Now it's too late. If that moment doesn't make you stop and think, nothing will. We all live as if we have unlimited time, pushing off what matters and pretending we are immortal. But you are not immortal. You are flesh and bone, here today, gone tomorrow. Every morning you wake up is a gift. Every moment you spend doing something meaningless is time you'll never get back. The Stoics had a name for this truth, memento mori. Remember, you will die. You will die. Not to scare you, not to make you live in fear, but to wake you up. Because right now, you are asleep. You go through your routine like a machine. You wake up, go to work, scroll through your phone, watch the same TV shows, complain about the same problems, and tell yourself you'll change one day. But one day is a lie. You used to run every morning, but now your knees ache and you feel tired more quickly. You used to think you had decades ahead of you, but suddenly 40 is here and you don't know where the last 20 years went. The people you love are getting older. Your parents, your friends. One day you'll look around and some of them will be gone. You will be gone. So why do you keep wasting your time on things that don't matter? Why do you keep postponing happiness? If you died tomorrow, would you be satisfied with how you live today? Most men won't answer that question. Most men would rather pretend they don't hear it. But that won't change reality. Memento mori isn't just about accepting death. It's about using it. When you remember that time is limited, you stop tolerating mediocrity. You stop spending your days doing things that drain you. You stop surrounding yourself with people who bring you down. You stop making decisions out of fear. You start moving with urgency. You start choosing differently. You stop waiting. You stop assuming that later is guaranteed. You stop thinking that next year will be the time when you finally take that trip, finally write that book, finally call that person you miss. You start realizing that if you don't act now, you might never get the chance. The biggest regret of dying men isn't failure. It's never having tried. It's looking back and realizing they spent too many years worrying, hesitating, and waiting for the right time that never came. They regret the words they never said, the risks they never took, the love they didn't express, the experiences they postponed. They regret that they spent their best years existing, not living. And you, sitting here right now, still have time. But for how long, no one knows. That's the terrifying part. You wake up thinking today is just another ordinary day. So did thousands of people who won't live to see tomorrow. They had plans, they had things they were going to do one day, but their time ran out. And one day, yours will too. The question is, what will you do with the time you have left? You think you have time. You don't. So, what are you going to do about it? Because the clock is still ticking. 5. You spent years building a life. Now it's time to build yourself. For the last 20 years, you've been building a career, a reputation, a name people respect. You've put in the hours, sacrificed sleep, and carried responsibilities that most wouldn't dare to. You've done what was expected. You provided. You delivered. You became the man society told you to be. But somewhere along the way, you lost something. At some point between the long work hours, the endless deadlines, and the need to provide, you forgot who you were before the world told you who you should be. You forgot the man who used to dream, who had passions, who used to do things simply because he loved them. Not because they were productive, not because they were profitable, but because they made him feel alive. You used to love drawing, but now you barely pick up a pen unless it's to sign another contract. You used to play the guitar, but now the only sound filling your evenings is the hum of an email notification. You used to read books that fed your mind, but now you only read reports, spreadsheets, and things that make you more efficient. You told yourself you didn't have time, and now, here you are. 40, or close to it, and something inside you is starting to crack. I know this feeling well. I've been sprinting for years, convinced that every second spent not working was a second wasted. I've skipped sleep, skipped meals, and convinced myself that I'll rest later. But later never comes. And now I find myself looking at the same road my Uncle Richard once warned me about. He told me this would happen. He told me that one day I'd wake up and realize that while I had built a great life, I had never built myself. He told me about a friend he once had, a man who did everything right, built a successful career, earned the respect of his peers, provided for his family, but by the time he retired, he had no idea who he was anymore. He had spent so long being what the world needed him to be that he never stopped to ask who he really was. One day, his wife asked him, "What do you want to do with the rest of your life?" He had no answer, because he had never stopped long enough to think about it. And that's the moment it hit him. He had built everything, except himself. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't build yourself, life will build you into someone you don't recognize. You've spent years worrying about your family, your finances, and your responsibilities. But when was the last time you worried about your own mind, your own growth, your own happiness? Most men don't. They push through. They tell themselves that as long as they keep moving, they're fine. They ignore the exhaustion, the creeping emptiness, the feeling that something isn't quite right. Until one day, they wake up and realize they've spent decades existing, not living. The Stoics knew this feeling well. They understood that a man who does not master himself will always feel lost. They believed that a man must build 3 things in his life. 1, his mind, not with distractions, but with wisdom. Not with news and social media, but with philosophy, knowledge, and truth. 2, his body, not for vanity, but for strength. Not for appearance, but for endurance. 3, his soul, not with external validation, but with meaning. Not with what the world tells him is valuable, but with what he knows to be true. And if you don't prioritize these things, life will eat you alive. So what do? You reclaim yourself. You take back the parts of you that have been buried under the weight of obligations. You remember what made you feel alive before the world convinced you that survival was more important than living. Start small. Pick up the book you've been meaning to read. Go for a run, not to burn calories, but to remember what it feels like to move. Play the instrument that's been collecting dust in the corner. Have a conversation that isn't about work, money, or responsibilities. And most importantly, stop waiting. Most men tell themselves they'll do this later, when things settle down, when the business is stable, when the kids are older, when they retire. But later is an illusion. Later is the graveyard of dreams. If you don't start now, you never will. This is your moment. The moment when you stop building for the world and start building for yourself. You've built a life. Now it's time to build you. 6. Stop searching for meaning. Start creating it. There was a time when Richard felt like his life had ended. After his divorce, he would come home to an empty house, sit in silence, and wonder where everything went wrong. The years he spent building a family, working hard, doing what was expected, it had all led him here, to a place of loneliness, to a place where nothing made sense anymore. For months, he drifted through his days. Wake up, go to work, come home, repeat. It was a cycle that felt meaningless, a life that had lost its shape. He tried distracting himself, watching TV, scrolling through his phone, going out with coworkers, but nothing helped. The emptiness followed him everywhere. Then one day, everything changed. It started with something small. A kid from the neighborhood asked him for help fixing a bike. Richard had spent years working with his hands, fixing engines, solving mechanical problems, things that once gave him a sense of purpose. So he helped. He tightened the loose chain, adjusted the gears, and within minutes the kid was riding off shouting, "Thanks, mister." The next day, another kid showed up, this time with a busted lawnmower. Then another, and another. Before he knew it, Richard was spending his evenings in the garage, teaching kids in the neighborhood how to fix things. At first, it was just a way to pass the time. But then, something happened. One evening, as he was locking up, a teenager lingered by the door. Richard asked him if he needed anything. The boy hesitated, then said, "I never had a father to teach me this stuff." "You don't know it, but you've changed my life." Richard stood there, stunned. For years he had been looking for meaning, searching for it in success, in family, in things that were supposed to make him whole. But meaning isn't something you find, it's something you create. Most men make the same mistake Richard did. They believe that if they just look hard enough, if they chase the right things, if they find the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect purpose, then life will finally make sense. But that's not how it works. You don't find meaning, you build it. And that's where most people get stuck. They think meaning is something external, something waiting for them in the future. They tell themselves that when they reach a certain milestone, when they make a certain amount of money, when they retire, when they finally figure it out, then life will feel complete. But how many men have spent their entire lives chasing something, only to realize, too late, that they were running in the wrong direction? How many men wake up one day, having built everything they were told to build, only to feel empty? Richard had followed the path. He had done what was expected. And yet in the end, none of it gave him the deep sense of purpose he craved. Because meaning isn't about what you have, it's about what you give. You could spend your whole life searching, hoping that something outside of you will finally make everything feel complete. But if you keep searching, you'll never start living. The truth is, meaning isn't given to you. It's something you must create through action. It doesn't come from a title, a paycheck, or external success. It comes from doing something that matters, not to society, not to your boss, not even to your family, but to you. You don't need to quit your job, move across the world, or start over completely. But you do need to start doing something that matters. That might mean mentoring someone who needs guidance. It might mean volunteering. It might mean taking a skill you already have and sharing it with others. It might be starting a project that excites you, not because it makes money, not because it boosts your status, but because it fills your soul. Richard could have spent the rest of his life bitter, believing that everything he built had collapsed. Instead, he found a way to build something new, something real, something that mattered. and so can you. The problem isn't that your life lacks meaning. The problem is that you're waiting for meaning to magically appear. But it won't. If you don't create it, you will keep feeling lost. Most men never realize this. They spend their whole lives waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for permission, waiting for something to happen to them. But meaning isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be world-changing. It just has to be real. And the first step? Stop thinking. Stop waiting. Start doing. Pick something, anything, a project, a hobby, a skill, a way to serve others. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. Because here's the truth. If you don't create meaning in your life, someone else will do it for you. And you might not like what they choose. So the question isn't whether your life has meaning. The question is, are you ready to build it? 7. Fear is not your enemy. It's your compass. Fear has been whispering in your ear for years. Don't do it. Stay where it's safe. What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if you're not good enough? You've wanted to quit your job and do something that excites you, but fear kept you in your chair. You've dreamed of traveling alone, learning a new skill, or completely changing your lifestyle. But every time you got close, fear pulled you back. So you stayed. You settled. And over time, fear became something you obeyed instead of something you challenged. But here's the truth. Fear is not your enemy. It's your compass. Think about it. Every great moment in your life was preceded by fear. The first time you spoke in front of a crowd. The first time you made a major decision. The first time you stepped outside your comfort zone. Fear was there, telling you to stop. But you pushed through, and on the other side of it, you became someone stronger. Fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal. It's pointing to the places you need to grow. It's revealing the things you truly care about. It's exposing the areas where you're still holding yourself back. But most people misunderstand it. They think that fear means danger. That means to turn around, go back, and stay safe. But not all fear is the same. There's the fear that keeps you alive. The instinct that tells you not to touch fire, not to step in front of traffic, not to walk down a dark alley at night. That fear is useful. Then there's the fear that keeps you small. The fear that stops you from speaking up, from trying, from stepping into the unknown. The fear that whispers, stay here, don't risk it, don't embarrass yourself. That fear is not protecting you. It's trapping you. And if you don't recognize the difference, you will spend your entire life mistaking stagnation for safety. How many times have you told yourself, I'll do it when I'm ready, when I'm more experienced, when I have more money, when the timing is better, when I'm more confident? But readiness is an illusion. No one ever feels fully ready. The ones who succeed are the ones who act before they feel ready. The ones who feel the fear and move forward anyway. Ask yourself, what is fear stopping me from doing right now? Quitting a job that's draining you, starting that business you've been thinking about for years, speaking up about something that matters to you, ending a relationship that no longer serves you, changing your lifestyle in a way that people around you might not understand. Whatever it is, I guarantee you this. The life you want is on the other side of that fear. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff. On the other side is the life you dream about. The life where you are in control. The life where you wake up excited instead of exhausted. Between you and that life, a bridge. That bridge is your fear. Most people stand at the edge, staring at the bridge, wondering if it will hold their weight. They analyze it, overthink it. Some turn around and walk away. Some stand there for years, waiting for certainty. And some, they take a deep breath, step forward, and start walking. At first, the bridge shakes. Their legs tremble. Fear screams at them to turn back. But with each step, they realize something. The bridge is stronger than they thought. And on the other side, they are stronger than they imagined. So here's the choice you have to make. Will you keep waiting at the edge, or will you walk forward? Fear will always be there. But now you know the truth. It's not there to stop you. It's there to guide you. So step forward. The life you want is waiting. 8. The greatest lie you ever believed, that your past defines you. Have you ever felt like your past is a weight chained to your ankles? Like no matter how much time passes, it still drags behind you, reminding you of who you were, what you did, and everything that went wrong. Maybe you lost everything in a failed business. Maybe you trusted someone who betrayed you. Maybe you let fear stop you, and now you regret the years you wasted. Or maybe it's not just one thing. Maybe it's a collection of failures, disappointments, and mistakes that have shaped the way you see yourself. But here's the truth. You are not your past. That's the biggest lie you've ever believed. Richard believed it too. He spent most of his life convinced that he was a man who couldn't change, that his story had already been written, that after 50 years of being one kind of man, he couldn't suddenly become another. Then something happened that forced him to question everything. At 50, his world fell apart. His marriage was gone. His job, the one he thought he'd retire from, vanished overnight. The life he had built crumbled, and he was left standing in the ruins, asking himself the same question over and over. Is this really it? Is this how my story ends? For months, he did nothing. He sat with his regret. He let his past define him. He told himself that change wasn't possible, that starting over was for younger men. He convinced himself that this was the life he deserved. Until one day, he heard something that changed everything. No one can go back and start over, but anyone can start today and write a different ending. Something about those words hit him like a punch to the gut. Because that's when he realized he had been waiting for something impossible. He had been waiting to change the past, to erase his mistakes, to go back and do things differently. But that would never happen. The only thing he had control over was what he did next. So he stopped waiting. He stopped telling himself that it was too late. He stopped letting his past define him. Instead, he started small. He picked up a book on a subject he had always been interested in. He reached out to people he had lost touch with. He stopped focusing on everything he had lost and started focusing on what he could still create. And day by day, choice by choice, he rewrote his story. Because that's what most people never realize. Your past is just a story, and you are the one who gets to decide how it ends. Think about it. How many years have you spent letting old failures define you? How much time have you wasted believing that because something didn't work out before, it will never work out in the future? You keep replaying that mistake from 10 years ago, that bad decision, that wrong turn, as if it's who you still are. But it's not. You are not the man who made that mistake. You are the man who survived it. But as long as you let your past control you, you will stay exactly where you are. It's like carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks. Every failure, every regret, every moment of shame, you put them in the bag and carry them with you everywhere you go. No wonder you feel exhausted. But here's the thing. You can put the bag down. You don't have to carry it anymore. You don't have to keep punishing yourself for things you can't change. You can wake up tomorrow and decide right now to do something different. It won't be easy. The past is comfortable, even when it hurts. You know who you were. You know the weight of your regrets. But the future? That's unknown. That's terrifying. That's why so many men choose to stay stuck. Because at least stuck is familiar. But you have a choice. You can let your past define you, or you can let it refine you. You can keep telling yourself the same story, or you can pick up the pen and write a new one. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to change everything overnight, but you do have to take a step. What's one thing, just one, that you've been avoiding because you still believe you're the man you used to be? Is it reaching out to someone and making things right? Is it finally pursuing that goal you gave up on years ago? Is it forgiving yourself for something that's been weighing you down? Because here's the truth. The past is only real if you keep living in it. But if you decide, today, right now, to stop letting it define you, you will realize something powerful. You were never trapped. You were always free. So what are you going to do with that freedom? If you've made it this far, then something inside you knows it's time for change. You are not here by accident. You are here because a part of you refuses to settle. Because you know that life isn't meant to be spent feeling lost, stuck, or held back by fear. You've learned that 40 is not the end. It's the moment of truth. That time isn't running out, but your illusions are. That the shadows you ignore will rule you. That waiting for meaning is a trap, and the only way forward is to create it. Most importantly, you now know that your past does not define you. What defines you is what you choose to do next. But knowing is not enough. This lesson, this philosophy, this shift in perspective, it only becomes real when you act. When you decide to let go of what holds you back and step into the life you are meant to live. So start today. Take one action, no matter how small. Move toward what challenges you, toward what excites you, toward what scares you. And if this message spoke to you, share your story. What lesson hit you the hardest? What change are you ready to make? Your future is still unwritten, but today, you hold the pen.